It happened so fast. 1 second, Emily's medical monitor was beeping like normal, and the next, everything went silent. The house went dark. My heart stopped. I sprinted to her room. Her lips were turning pale, her tiny chest barely moving. The machines that kept her alive were dead. I ran outside in the rain, screaming for help, and that's when I saw her. Karen, our HOA president, standing under her umbrella, smirking like she'd just taught us a lesson. In her hand was the master switch key. "Rules are rules," she said coldly. "You've got too many devices hooked up. It's unsafe for the neighborhood." Unsafe? My daughter was fighting for her life. And that's when I realized this wasn't about safety, it was about power. Before I tell you what she did next, tell me, where are you watching this from? Comment your city below and hit subscribe before we begin. If you had walked past our house 2 months ago, you'd have thought it was the picture of peace. The grass trimmed just right, the flower beds lined with bright daisies, and a small pink wind chime that my daughter Emily had chosen herself. It was the sound of home. Every morning, that gentle chime danced with the wind while the soft hum of her medical machines filled the living room, steady, rhythmic, almost musical. That hum meant she was alive. It meant the machines were doing their job, keeping her little lungs working through another night. Emily was only 8 years old, but she'd already fought more battles than most adults ever will. Born with a rare respiratory condition, she needed constant support from her oxygen concentrator and a small ventilator that sat by her bedside. We'd learned to live with wires, tubes, alarms, and midnight checks. It was exhausting, but it was our life. And we loved her too much to complain. When we first moved to Maplewood Heights, the perfect HOA neighborhood, it felt like a blessing. The streets were clean, the lawns were flawless, the neighbors waved from their porches like something out of a magazine. The realtor promised peace of mind, safety, and a strong community spirit. After years of hospital visits, that's all we wanted. Stability. A fresh start. On our first day, we met Karen, the HOA president. Mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde hair, pressed blouse, clipboard, always in hand. She smiled wide, but her eyes scanned everything. The ramp by our door, the extra outlet for Emily's machines, even the small generator tucked beside the porch. "Oh, medical equipment?" she asked, tilting her head with that fake curiosity that already carried judgment. "Yes," I said calmly. "Our daughter's devices. They keep her breathing at night." Karen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, of course. We just have a few community guidelines. You'll find a copy in your welcome folder. We like to keep things uniform. Uniform. The word stayed with me longer than it should have, but at that time I brushed it off. Everyone has a rule or two. And besides, we were the new family. We didn't want trouble. Our days fell into a peaceful rhythm. Mornings started with Emily's laughter as her mother braided her hair, the smell of pancakes drifting through the air while the machines hummed quietly beside the breakfast table. She loved coloring pictures of butterflies, always in bright pink and blue, taping them onto her ventilator. "If I have to breathe through this, it should look happy," she'd say. Evenings were my favorite. I'd sit on the porch, sipping coffee, watching the sunset over Maplewood. The neighbors were friendly enough. A polite wave here, a nice weather there. But there was always one house where the blinds never fully opened. Karen's. She watched everything from behind those thin slats. You could feel her presence even when you couldn't see her. One afternoon, as I was mowing the lawn, she walked over again, holding that ever-present clipboard. "You're doing such a great job keeping things tidy," she began sweetly, "but those cords on the side of the house, they're a bit unsightly, don't you think?" I turned to look. She meant the power cables running from our generator into the house, the cables keeping Emily's equipment powered. "They're for my daughter's devices," I said carefully. "We can't really hide them." Her smile faltered for just a second. "I understand, but the HOA does have standards. Maybe consider running them through the inside wall? It would look less industrial." I forced a polite smile. "I'll look into it." That night, I told my wife, Sarah. She frowned but tried to laugh it off. Maybe she's just doing her job. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about rules. It was about control. A week later, we found our first HOA notice taped to the front door, bright yellow paper flapping in the morning wind. Violation notice. Exterior medical equipment, visible cords, and non-standard power lines must be removed or concealed to comply with HOA Aesthetics Policy 4B12. Please correct this issue within 7 days to avoid fines or further action. I stared at the paper for a long time, feeling something twist in my gut. Fines or further action? For trying to keep my daughter alive? Sarah's hands trembled as she read it. She can't be serious. They can't do this. She is serious, I said quietly. And this is just the beginning. We tried reasoning with her. I sent an email explaining the medical necessity, attaching hospital documents and doctor letters. Karen responded the next morning, not with sympathy, but with a scanned copy of the HOA's electrical compliance clause. Her message ended with, "We must maintain the neighborhood's visual harmony. Exceptions create imbalance. I trust you understand." Balance. That was her word for cruelty. Over the next few days, she began inspecting our property more often, always under the guise of community safety. Sometimes I'd catch her standing near our fence, pretending to check landscaping while her eyes followed every wire leading to the generator. Emily, innocent as always, waved to her once from the window. "Hi, Miss Karen," she said through her little breathing mask. Karen just stared, lips pressed into a thin smile, and turned away. That night, as I tucked Emily into bed, I lingered beside her machines longer than usual. Their soft hum filled the silence. She looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Daddy, am I in trouble with the neighborhood lady?" I froze. "No, sweetheart. You've done nothing wrong. You're perfect." She smiled, drifting to sleep as the monitor blinked rhythmically beside her. Downstairs, Sarah sat at the table, that yellow notice lying between us like a threat. "We should talk to a lawyer," she whispered. I shook my head. "Let's keep it peaceful for now." But my eyes drifted to the window. Across the street, through those half-closed blinds, I could see a shadow, Karen, watching again. Her porch light flickered twice like a silent signal. For the first time, I felt something colder than fear. It was the realization that this wasn't just a neighbor with too much time on her hands. It was someone who believed her rules were more important than human life. The hum of the ventilator upstairs carried through the walls, steady and fragile. I looked up toward Emily's room and whispered to myself, I didn't know it then, but that light across the street, that flickering glow, would be the last thing shining the night everything went dark. The next few weeks felt like living under a microscope. Every time I stepped outside, I could feel Karen's eyes on me through blinds, across driveways, even reflected in car windows. She didn't need words anymore. Her silence was louder than any threat. It started small. An email about improperly stored equipment, then another about non-compliant extension cords. Each message came with the same tone, formal, polite, and dripping with that cold, bureaucratic poison that made you feel guilty for existing differently. I tried ignoring it, but she wouldn't stop. One morning, I woke to the sound of her voice outside, calm, sharp, commanding. Through the curtain, I saw her standing with 2 HOA board members pointing toward the generator. They were taking photos. I stepped outside. "Excuse me," I said firmly, trying to keep my composure. Karen turned with that perfect smile. "Oh, we're just documenting some community issues for our monthly report." "Community issues?" I repeated, staring at the camera. "That generator powers my daughter's medical machines. It's not some decoration you can complain about." Karen tilted her head. "I understand, but other homeowners have raised concerns about noise levels and visual clutter. It's not personal, Mr. Harris, just policy." That word again. Policy. I clenched my fists. "You think a child's life is clutter?" Her smile didn't even twitch. "Everyone has challenges, sir. But we all have to follow the same rules. If we make one exception, where does it stop?" She walked away, leaving those words hanging in the air like a curse. Sarah came out, trembling. "She's gone too far this time. We need to report her." "To who?" I said bitterly. "She is the HOA." By that weekend, we received our first fine notice, $250 for failure to correct visual code violations. 2 days later, another $150 for unapproved modifications. I stopped opening them after that. Neighbors started keeping their distance. Conversations turned awkward. You could feel the unease spreading. Nobody wanted to cross Karen. One night, the Smiths from 2 houses down quietly left a note in our mailbox. "We support you, but please understand she can make life miserable here. Be careful." It wasn't courage. It was fear. And that fear made her stronger. Karen began holding extra HOA meetings, thinly disguised as community safety sessions. I went to one, hoping to speak my mind. But the moment I walked in, the chatter died. Every head turned toward me. Karen sat at the center table, perfectly composed, tapping a pen against her notes. "Mr. Harris," she greeted, that icy charm never breaking. "Glad you could join us. We were just discussing fire hazards caused by excessive home wiring." I took a seat. "You mean my daughter's life support wiring?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "We all know what I'm referring to. You're putting the neighborhood's electrical grid under strain." "That's nonsense," I snapped. "I've got a dedicated circuit, inspected and cleared by a licensed electrician." "Maybe," she said, leaning forward, "but not approved by this board." The room went silent. You could hear the pen drop. That's when I realized this wasn't about safety. It was about control. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was enforcing obedience. After that night, things got worse. We started finding HOA notices taped directly to the generator, sometimes twice a day. One morning, a warning was stapled to Emily's ramp, right where she could see it. Sarah tore it off, shaking with anger. "She's doing this to humiliate us." I nodded. "She wants to break us down until we leave," but we couldn't. Emily's hospital is nearby. Her specialists were local. This house wasn't just property, it was her survival zone. Then came the community inspection week. Karen sent out a cheerful newsletter. "Friendly reminder. HOA officers will be conducting surprise exterior inspections this week to ensure compliance with our neighborhood's high standards." That morning, while I was at work, I got a call from Sarah. Her voice was trembling. "She's here again with those men from the board. They're in our yard taking photos of Emily's medical cables." I told them to stop. She said she has the right. I left work immediately. By the time I got home, they were gone, but a red tag was hanging from the generator. Notice of electrical violation, unauthorized modification. Immediate removal required. I ripped it off and threw it to the ground. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore, from fury. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by a pile of fines and letters. I stared at them, one by one, feeling the anger turn to something darker, resolve. Sarah joined me quietly. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. I looked up at her, the exhaustion in her eyes reflecting my own. "I'll install a backup line," I said. "Off-grid. She won't even know it's there." "But that's against, I don't care," I interrupted, my voice trembling. "I'll break every rule she's ever written if it means keeping Emily safe." That night, I worked until dawn, rerouting cables, securing extra power storage, making sure that no matter what Karen did, my little girl would breathe. For a few nights, things were calm again. Emily laughed, Sarah slept better, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe Karen had moved on to a new target. But people like her don't move on. They double down. 2 weeks later, we received a letter marked final warning. Due to repeated violations and unauthorized electrical alterations, your property will be subject to a mandatory compliance correction. HOA maintenance has been authorized to disconnect unsafe power lines for community safety. I read the letter 3 times before the word sank in. Mandatory. Disconnect. Sarah covered her mouth, her face pale. She can't actually do that." "She can," I whispered, "and she will." The next day, I saw the maintenance van parked outside her house. Karen stood on her porch, arms folded, sipping coffee like a general before battle. As the sun went down, I checked Emily's machines again and again, my heart pounding harder each time. Every light, every wire, every hum, I memorized it. I didn't sleep, because deep down I knew it was coming. That porch light across the street, her signal, flickered again. Twice, just like before. And somewhere inside me, something whispered, "The next time that light goes out, so will hers." The storm rolled in before sunset. Heavy clouds swallowing the sky, thunder rumbling like distant artillery. The air smelled of rain and electricity. I remember standing at the window, staring at the black clouds gathering over Maplewood Heights, feeling something wrong in my gut. Inside, Emily sat on the couch, coloring quietly, her oxygen tube resting gently across her cheek. The soft hum of her ventilator mixed with the sound of raindrops tapping against the glass. Sarah was in the kitchen, making soup, humming faintly. For once, the house felt almost normal. Then knock, knock, knock. I froze. No one visits during a storm. When I opened the door, two HOA maintenance men stood there, rain dripping off their jackets. One held a clipboard, the other a tool bag, and behind them, under a bright red umbrella, was Karen. Perfect posture, perfect hair, that same hollow smile. "Evening," she said, raising her voice over the rain. "We're just here for a quick inspection. Routine." I stepped outside, blocking the doorway. "It's storming. Whatever you're doing can wait until tomorrow." Her smile didn't waver. "Unfortunately, Mr. Harris, this can't wait. We've received complaints about electrical surges from your property. HOA policy allows immediate correction." "Correction?" I repeated, my pulse rising. "You mean disconnection." Karen's tone turned cold. "For the safety of the community." Sarah appeared behind me. "You can't touch that line. Our daughter needs it." Karen sighed dramatically, as if bored by compassion. "We've gone over this. You were warned multiple times. You've left us no choice." I stepped forward, rain soaking through my shirt. "Karen, if you cut that power, my daughter could die." Her umbrella tilted slightly, her lips tightening into something almost like a smirk. "Then maybe you should have followed the rules." I felt something inside me snap, but before I could say another word, the maintenance men started moving toward the side yard, toward the generator. I shouted, running after them, "Don't you dare touch that." One of them hesitated. The other said, quietly, "We're just following orders, sir." The rain grew heavier, lightning flashing white across the street. The air was thick with tension, that kind of silence before chaos. I reached the generator first, planting myself in front of it. "You'll have to go through me." Karen called out from her porch, her voice echoing over the storm. "Cut it." A single motion, a hand pulling a lever, and everything went silent. The sound I'd lived with for years, the hum of those machines, the steady rhythm of life, vanished. "No!" I screamed, sprinting back inside. Emily's alarms blared once, then stopped. The screens went black. Sarah was already kneeling by her side, shaking, trying to restart the backup power. "It's not working," she cried. "The battery, it's dead." I fell to my knees beside them, trying to plug the machine into anything that might work. Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating Emily's pale face. Her chest rose, shallowly, her tiny hands twitching. "Come on, baby, breathe," I whispered, pressing the emergency pump bag. "Please, God, breathe." Sarah sobbed, her hands trembling over the unresponsive controls. The rain outside sounded like a war drum. The whole house felt alive with fear. Then I heard it, Karen's voice outside, muffled but unmistakable. "It's for the best. Maybe now they'll learn." Something inside me broke. I ran to the door, burst out into the storm, and shouted, "You killed the power. She can't breathe." Karen didn't flinch. She just stared, her umbrella tilted against the rain, her expression empty. "You should have complied." "Complied?" I screamed. "This is murder." Neighbors' lights flickered on, curtains moved, but no one came out. Everyone just watched. Lightning tore across the sky, lighting up her face for a split second, calm, dry and motionless, while I stood drenched, shaking with rage and fear. I ran back inside, slipping on the wet floor. Emily was still, her lips turning blue. Sarah was sobbing uncontrollably now. She's not breathing. Call 911. Please. I grabbed the phone, fingers trembling. 911, please. My daughter's life support has been cut. She's not breathing. The operator's calm voice didn't match the chaos around me. Sir, stay with me. Help is on the way. Minutes felt like hours. I tried pumping air manually, whispering prayers between sobs. Come on, Emmy, you're my strong girl. Come back to me. Sirens finally pierced through the storm, red and blue lights flashing against the walls. Paramedics rushed in, shouting orders. Move back, one yelled, kneeling beside her. They worked quickly, oxygen mask, chest compressions, emergency resuscitation. Come on, kiddo, stay with us, one of them said. I stood there, soaked, useless, shaking so hard I could barely breathe myself. Sarah clung to me, both of us watching the tiny rise and fall of our daughter's chest. After what felt like forever, one of the paramedics looked up and shouted, "We've got a pulse." Sarah collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I could barely see through the tears. As they carried Emily out, I followed, but something made me stop, a flicker of movement across the street. Karen, still on her porch, still watching. The flashing ambulance lights reflected off her umbrella like blood-red lightning. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Just stood there as they drove away, with my little girl fighting for her life. I stared back at her, rain running down my face, heart pounding. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she turned away. That was the moment I stopped being afraid of her. That night changed everything. The storm passed, but the silence it left behind was worse than thunder. The house smelled of wet carpet and burnt plastic. The machines lay dead in the corner. I sat by Emily's empty bed until sunrise, the walls echoing with memories, laughter, bedtime stories, the sound of air flowing through the tubes. The power came back around dawn. Too late. I walked outside, the world washed clean by rain but heavy with the weight of what had happened. Across the street, Karen's porch light flickered again, steady this time. Sarah came up behind me, her voice barely a whisper. She did this. I know, I said quietly, and she thinks she'll get away with it. I turned toward her house, my reflection staring back in her window. She took away our power, I said slowly. Now I'll take away hers. The hospital was colder than I remembered. The walls hummed with machines, the same kind that kept my little girl alive. Only this time, they weren't in our home. They surrounded Emily, blinking, beeping, keeping her heart moving while she lay still beneath a blanket that looked too big for her tiny body. Sarah sat beside her bed, clutching Emily's hand like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. I stood by the window, watching the rain smear the glass. Outside, the world was waking up, coffee shops opening, cars passing, as if last night hadn't changed everything. A nurse entered quietly. She's stable for now, she said softly. But the doctors want to know what caused the power loss. They're reporting it as a possible case of negligence. Negligence. The word stung like a blade. When the doctor came in, he didn't smile. He looked straight at me. Mr. Harris, hospital equipment logs show an abrupt loss of power lasting nearly 13 minutes. That's not a simple outage. We've contacted the police. They'll want statements. I nodded, though my voice wouldn't come out. Sarah just kept whispering to Emily, "You're safe now, baby. You're safe now." But Emily wasn't safe. Not really. Not while Karen was still across the street, sipping her coffee like she hadn't just played God. By evening, 2 officers came to the hospital room. One of them, Officer Ramirez, took notes as I explained what happened. The storm, the maintenance crew, Karen's umbrella, her words. She said, "Rules are rules. You have too many devices." Then they cut the line. Ramirez frowned. "Did you sign any consent or acknowledgement for maintenance work?" "Of course not." "Did they have an official electrical inspector?" "No, just HOA maintenance. 2 men I'd never seen before." The officer looked at his partner, then back at me. "Mr. Harris, do you have any cameras on your property?" I paused. "Yes, 2. One by the garage and one over the driveway. They might have caught her." He nodded. "Good. Save that footage. It might be all we need. When they left, Sarah finally looked up from Emily. Do you think they'll do anything? I hesitated. If they see what I saw, they will. The next day, I went home. The house felt like a crime scene. Wires hanging loose, the generator soaked, warning tags still fluttering on the fence. The silence inside was unbearable. I sat at my desk and opened the security feed. At first, just static and rain. Then movement. The footage showed the exact moment. Two maintenance men entering the yard, tools in hand, and Karen, under her red umbrella, watching. She pointed at the line. One man hesitated. She barked something I couldn't hear, but her hand gesture was clear. Cut it. My chest tightened. I replayed it again and again, freezing the frame where she gave the order. Her lips moving, her eyes cold. I transferred the clip to a flash drive. This wasn't just evidence, it was the truth. That night, I uploaded the video to the police case file, and without planning to, I also posted it to a neighborhood Facebook group. I didn't expect what came next. Within hours, hundreds of comments flooded in. She really did that. Oh my God, that poor family. This woman should be in jail. By morning, it wasn't just local. The post had been shared thousands of times. News outlets picked it up. HOA president accused of cutting power to disabled child's life support. Reporters gathered outside Maplewood Heights by noon. Cameras pointed at the same house where she used to watch everyone else. Now, the world was watching her. Karen tried to defend herself. Standing on her porch, wrapped in that same perfect outfit, she told a reporter it was a safety concern. They violated HOA electrical codes. I acted responsibly. Her voice shook slightly, but her arrogance didn't. That night, Sarah and I sat in Emily's hospital room watching the news. The anchor's voice echoed. Authorities are investigating whether the HOA president's actions led to a child's near-death experience. Legal experts call it a potential case of criminal negligence. Sarah turned to me, tears brimming. You did this. You made them see. I shook my head. She did this. I just showed them who she really is. The next morning, Officer Ramirez called. Mr. Harris, we reviewed your footage. It's clear she gave a direct order to cut the power. We've submitted it to the district attorney. Will she be charged? We can't promise yet, but we're close. After I hung up, I went to the hospital rooftop. I just needed air. The sky was pale blue, soft after so many days of storms. I closed my eyes and thought of Emily's smile, the way her laughter used to fill the house. Then I felt the weight of everything, the guilt, the anger, the exhaustion. I whispered to the wind, I promised I'd protect you, Emmy. I won't stop until she pays. Down below, a crowd was gathering near Karen's house, neighbors holding signs, Justice for Emily. No more HOA, tyranny. For the first time, Karen's porch light was off. That night, I got a call from a local news reporter. Mr. Harris, would you like to speak on camera? People need to hear your side. I hesitated. I don't want attention. I just want accountability. Then, tell your story, she said softly. Make sure it never happens again. When the segment aired, my words echoed over footage of our quiet street. Rules should protect people, not destroy them. My daughter's life isn't a code violation. It's sacred. The clip went viral. Donations poured in for Emily's recovery, messages of support from around the country. For once, the world wasn't silent. A week later, Karen filed a public statement through her lawyer, a bland apology that said nothing real. I deeply regret the unfortunate events. My intentions were purely in the interest of community safety. But the damage was done. Her perfect mask had cracked, and everyone could see the monster underneath. The police issued a formal citation. Her HOA position was suspended pending investigation. But that wasn't enough. Not for me. As I left the station that day, Ramirez stopped me. You did good, Mr. Harris. But I have to warn you, she's angry. She might retaliate. I met his eyes. She already did. Now it's my turn. A week later, the HOA called for an emergency meeting. It wasn't a coincidence. This was Karen's last attempt to salvage her throne. The notice slid under every door in Maplewood Heights. Community gathering. HOA leadership addressing recent misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. That was her word for almost killing my daughter. By sunset, the clubhouse was packed. The air buzzed with whispers, phones recording, faces tense. Neighbors who had once avoided eye contact now looked at me with sympathy and guilt. They'd watched this unfold from behind their blinds. And now, they were here to see it end. Karen stood at the front, pressed suit, pearl necklace, not a hair out of place. Her composure was flawless, but I could see the tremor in her hands. She adjusted the microphone and smiled her politician smile. "Good evening, everyone," she began, voice smooth. "I know there's been confusion and misinformation spreading online regarding a very unfortunate event. I want to assure you I acted solely in the best interests of this community's safety." Murmurs rippled across the room. Someone muttered, "Best interests?" Karen continued, "The Varises are good people, and I wish their daughter nothing but health. But we cannot ignore that their electrical modifications violated several HOA codes. That kept a child alive." I interrupted, stepping forward. My voice echoed through the hall, firm but calm. "Go on, Karen. Tell them how your rules were more important than a little girl's heartbeat." Her jaw tightened. "Mr. Harris, you're out of line." I smiled faintly. "Funny. That's what you said before you cut the line." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She tried to recover. "That's not true. The footage online is taken out of context. I never ordered anything. Then let's show them the full context," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small USB drive. The room fell silent. The HOA board members looked uneasy. I turned to the man at the projector and handed it to him. "Play it," I said. The lights dimmed. Rain poured on the screen. The footage showed the two maintenance men enter my yard, their boots sinking into the mud. Then there she was, Karen, standing under her red umbrella, pointing toward the generator. Her voice, muffled but clear. "Cut it." The men hesitated. She shouted again. I said, "Cut it." And then the click. The lights in my house going dark. The room gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Karen froze, eyes wide, lips parting. She looked like she'd just been stripped bare in front of everyone. I stepped closer to the microphone, my voice steady. That's the moment my daughter stopped breathing. 13 minutes without oxygen. 13 minutes of us watching her fade away while this woman called it community safety. Karen tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "This is manipulation. He's twisting the facts." "Facts," I said. "Those are your words, Karen. Your actions. The truth doesn't need twisting, it speaks for itself." A murmur turned into a wave. Neighbors who once feared her now glared openly. The board members whispered among themselves. I continued, "You didn't just break rules, Karen. You broke humanity. You played God with a child's life because her machines didn't fit your idea of aesthetic." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes in the front row. Emily, still weak, but awake, watched the live stream from her hospital bed. The nurses had told me she smiled when she saw me stand up to Karen. Karen stepped forward, trembling now. "I didn't mean harm. I was trying to keep the neighborhood safe." "Safe from what?" I shot back. "From compassion? From empathy? From the sound of a sick child's life support?" She shook her head, desperation setting in. "You're turning everyone against me." I looked around the room. "No, Karen. You did that the moment you forgot what it means to be human." The HOA vice president stood up. "Mrs. Miller," he said quietly, "we've reviewed the footage. The board has unanimously decided you are hereby removed from your position, effective immediately." Applause erupted. For the first time in months, people clapped, not out of fear but relief. Karen stood frozen, color draining from her face. "You can't do this. This is my community. I built this place." "No," I said softly. "You poisoned it." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, cameras flashing, reporters waiting outside like vultures. Her car screeched down the street, leaving nothing behind but the echo of her downfall. When the meeting ended, neighbors surrounded me, people I'd barely spoken to before. One woman said, "We should have stood up sooner." "I'm so sorry." Another man added, "We were scared." But No one deserves what she did. I just nodded. It's over now. But deep down, I knew. For me, it wasn't. Not yet. The next morning, the headline spread across every news site. HOA president removed after viral footage proves negligence. Justice for Emily. Family's courage sparks policy reform. By afternoon, the city council announced they were reviewing HOA authority laws. Karen's name became a symbol, not of power, but of cruelty. That evening, I drove back to the hospital. Emily was awake, her small hands clutching her stuffed bunny, her cheeks still pale, but her eyes bright as ever. "Daddy," she whispered through her oxygen mask. "Yeah, sweetheart. Did you make the bad lady go away?" I smiled faintly, fighting the lump in my throat. "Yeah, she won't bother us anymore." Sarah stood behind me, tears streaming down her face. "She's proud of you," she whispered. I kissed Emily's forehead. "No, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. You're the strongest girl I know." Emily giggled weakly. "Can we go home soon?" "Soon, I promised, but not to that house." As she drifted back to sleep, I looked out the hospital window. Across the city, lights glowed in every home, soft, safe, and warm. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. Karen had taken my daughter's light once, but now the world had taken hers. And standing there, listening to the steady rhythm of Emily's breathing, I finally understood something. Rules can build a neighborhood, but only kindness can make it a home. It's strange how silence can sound different once peace returns. For months, the quiet in our house had been heavy, the kind that pressed down on your chest, filled with fear and memory. But now, as I sat by the window watching the morning light spill over the walls, it felt softer, lighter. For the first time in a long while, it felt like hope. Emily's laughter echoed down the hallway again. Small, breathy, fragile, but real. She was home. The hospital finally cleared her after weeks of recovery. The machines were humming again, steady, rhythmic, alive, and every time I heard them, I didn't feel burdened. I felt gratitude. That sound meant she had won. The neighborhood, though, wasn't the same. The once dash-perfect Maplewood Heights had cracks now, not in its walls, but in its illusion. People had started talking to each other again, not in whispers, but in voices filled with guilt and realization. The same neighbors who had watched in silence now came forward, one by one, knocking on our door. "I'm so sorry," said Mrs. Patel, the woman from across the street who used to pull her curtains shut when Karen walked by. "I should have stood up sooner." The elderly couple next door brought over homemade pie and tears in their eyes. "We didn't know she'd really do it," they said. "We thought the HOA was supposed to protect us." I didn't have the heart to stay angry, because the truth is, silence doesn't always mean evil. Sometimes it's fear, and Karen had built her power on that fear. But now that fear was gone. Within weeks, Karen's name was stripped from every document, every HOA bulletin board. Her house went up for sale, and no one wanted to buy it. It stood there, the grandest house on the block, empty, hollow, and dark at night. Her porch light, the one that used to flicker as a warning, was finally off. Permanently. Sarah and I sat on the porch one evening, watching Emily chase bubbles across the lawn. The sky was painted orange and gold, the wind carrying the laughter of a child who'd survived. "You think we'll ever move on?" she asked quietly. I nodded slowly. "Maybe not move on, but move forward." She smiled faintly. "I like that." We both watched as Emily reached down to pick up a bubble wand that had fallen near the ramp. She looked up and grinned. "Daddy, the light's pretty again." And in that moment, I realized she was right. The world was brighter, not because the darkness had disappeared, but because we had refused to let it win. A week later, I got a call from a journalist who had followed our story. "Mr. Harris," she said, "your case has inspired several communities to rewrite their HOA policies. They're now requiring compassion clauses, exceptions for families with medical or accessibility needs. You've changed something bigger than just your neighborhood." I didn't know what to say. I just looked over at Emily, who was painting the side of her ventilator pink again. "Then it was worth it," I said softly. Still, some nights I couldn't sleep. I'd hear a sudden silence in the machines and my heart would stop until the hum returned. Trauma doesn't fade easily, but neither does resilience. One night, I walked outside and stood at the edge of the yard. The air was cool, stars scattered across the sky. I looked toward Karen's empty house, the windows dark, the mailbox overflowing. "I forgive you," I whispered, "not for her sake, but for mine." Because hatred is just another kind of power, and I was done living under it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I made it my mission to make sure our story, was heard. I started speaking at community meetings, telling people what happens when empathy is replaced by ego, when rules matter more than lives. At one meeting, an old man stood up and said, "We never thought about it that way. We just wanted things to look perfect." I told him, "Perfection isn't what saves us. Compassion is." The audience clapped, not for me, but for the message, for the truth that sometimes we all forget. Because the real danger isn't power, it's indifference. Weeks later, Emily's school held a small celebration for her return. She walked across the classroom with her portable oxygen by her side, her friends cheering, her teacher crying. They made her a handmade card that said, "You're our hero, Emily." That night, she asked me a question I'll never forget. "Daddy, why did that lady hate us?" I paused, searching for words. She didn't hate us, sweetheart. She just didn't understand us. Some people are scared of what they don't understand. Emily thought for a moment, then smiled. Then maybe someone should teach them. Out of the mouths of children comes the simplest wisdom. When I look back on everything, the fear, the anger, the storm, I realize the story isn't about Karen anymore. It's about every parent who's ever had to fight just to keep their child safe. It's about the strength you find when you're cornered, the courage you discover when no one else stands beside you. And it's about what happens when love refuses to surrender. As I sit here now, recording this story for all of you, I want you to remember something. No matter how cruel the world seems, someone's watching, someone's listening, someone will speak up when it matters. If this story broke your heart, if it made you angry, or if it made you think, then do something about it. Don't scroll past. Don't let people like Karen win. Stand up. Speak out. Because one voice may not change the world, but it can save a life. A narrator's voice, calm, resolute. Sometimes the darkest storms don't come from the sky. They come from the hearts of those who think they have the right to control others. But if you stand your ground, even the coldest storm will pass. Cut to Emily drawing under the sunlight, the gentle hum of her medical machine blending with birdsong. Because in the end, I whisper, light always returns to the house that never gave up. If this story touched your heart, hit subscribe, share Emily's story, and leave a red heart in the comments. Tell me, have you ever faced a Karen who thought rules mattered more than people?